Mornings always start the same way, with aching joints and the quiet creak of floorboards beneath my feet. I, Winifred Widowson, 67, a widow and former English teacher at the local Stockton school, had long been accustomed to waking at first light. It was a habit from the time when my Alfred was alive and we had to get up early to make breakfast for the children before school. Now Alfred has been gone for 5 years and the kids are long grown up, but I still get up at 6 in the morning and go down to the kitchen to make tea. It's always quiet in the morning in our now only my small house on the outskirts of Stockton. Quiet comes in many forms, though. Sometimes it's cozy, thought provoking, and sometimes it's pressurizing, a reminder of the emptiness that has formed since my husband left. Today is Wednesday, which means my daughter Iona will be arriving this afternoon with her two children, Wilfred, who is 8, and Hattie, who is 6. Iona works as a cashier at the supermarket, and on Wednesdays she has the day shift, so she leaves the kids with me. Although, to be honest, the word leaves makes it sound like she has a choice and consults me. In fact, she just brings them in and leaves. Mom, you don't mind, do you? I have a job, and the kids are fine with you, she says every time. And what am I supposed to say? That I, an old woman, tired of running after two hyperactive children, that I have my own plans? What plans can a retired widow have? That's what Jonah thinks, and Osbert too. Osbert is my son, 3 years younger than Jonah. He works as a clerk for an insurance company, is married to Delilah, and they just had a son, my third grandchild. The baby is only 3 months old, and they named him Percival, a pretentious name Delilah chose. I'm not particularly fond of my sister-in-law. She's the kind of woman who always knows what's best and isn't shy about saying it out loud, even to me. Winnie, she's the one who shortens my name like we're girlfriends. You should repaint the kitchen. That color is totally out of style. And change the curtains, they look so last century. The curtains really are from the last century. Alfred picked them out when we first moved in 42 years ago. But Delilah doesn't need to know that. I pour myself a cup of tea and sit by the window, looking out at the small garden. It needs attention too, with weeds poking up between the rose bushes I planted with Alfred. I should weed it, but my back isn't what it used to be. Osbert used to help with these things, but since he married Delilah, he's been coming less and less often. And if he does, it's not to help his mother. The phone rings, interrupting my thoughts. It's Jonah. Mom, hi. Listen, I can't pick up the kids at 5 today like I usually do. I've been asked to stay until 7. You don't mind, do you? I don't mind. I never mind. Because saying no meant listening to sighs and hints about how hard it was for her to raise the kids alone after her divorce from that no-nonsense Adrian. Of course, Jonah. Don't worry, I reply and hear her exhale in relief. Thanks, Mom. You're the best. I'll pick them up around 7, or maybe 8:30 if there's traffic. She hangs up without even asking how I'm feeling or if I have plans for the evening. Though what plans can a woman my age have? That's what my kids think. But I do have plans. Tonight is book club at the library, and we're discussing a new novel I read last week. The meeting starts at 6 o'clock. Now I'm going to miss it. I sigh and start preparing the house for the grandchildren's arrival. I put the fragile things up high, pull out the board games I keep especially for them, bake oatmeal cookies. Wilfred loves them. By 1 o'clock, everything is ready, and I sit down to rest. Jonah brings the kids in at 10 to 2. She doesn't even go into the house. She stops the car at the gate, lets the kids out, and waves at me. Mom, thank you so much. I'll be there at 7 or a little later. And drives off, leaving me with two energetic children who are already running towards the house. Grandma, Hattie screams, hugging my legs. Did you bake cookies? Of course I did, dear. It's in the kitchen. Wilfred, without saying a word, rushes past me straight into the kitchen. I can hear him opening the cookie jar. Wilfred, no more than 2 before dinner, I yell. But I realize it's no use. The day passes in its usual bustle. Wilfred and Hattie run around the house, play in the garden, fight over toys, make up, fight again. I make their lunch, help Wilfred with his homework, read Hattie a story. By 6 o'clock, I feel drained. Book club has already started without me, and Jonah is still gone. At 7:30, the phone rings. It's her again. Mom, I'm sorry, but I'm stuck. There's an accident on the main road and the traffic's terrible. I can't get here before 8, maybe even later than that. I sigh and say it's okay. The kids have already eaten dinner and are watching cartoons in the living room. Thank you, Mom. You're the best. Jonah arrives at the beginning of 10. The kids are already asleep, Hattie on the couch and Wilfred in the chair. I've covered them with plaids and sit next to them, trying to read a book, but my eyes are sleepy from exhaustion. I'm sorry, Mom, Jonah whispers, coming into the living room. That traffic was a nightmare. I nod and help her carry the sleeping kids to the car. She doesn't even offer to let me stay the night, even though it's late and I'll have to make dinner myself. But I don't complain. I never complain. After they leave, I return to an empty house. Though I'm tired, I can't go to bed right away. I sit by the window and look out at the night garden, reflecting on my life. I once had dreams and plans. I wanted to travel, write books, maybe even open a small bookstore. But then the kids came along, and all my dreams took a back seat. And now that the kids are grown, all I have left is the role of grandmother and free babysitter. Saturday begins with a phone call. This time, it's Osbert. Mom, are you home? I'll come by in an hour. I need to talk to you. His voice is tense, and that's what worries me. Usually, Osbert only calls when he needs something. Last time it was a request to babysit Percival while he and Delilah went to some corporate event. I make tea and cookies and tidy up the living room, even though it's already clean. Osbert arrives exactly 1 hour later, alone without Delilah and the baby, which is odd. He usually uses his visits to me as an opportunity to give his wife a break from the baby. Mommy, he says, kissing my cheek, how are you? Fine, thank you, I reply, even though my knee is actually bothering me again and my blood pressure is elevated. How's Delilah? How's the baby? He's fine. He makes an impatient gesture with his hand, as if dismissing the subject. Mom, I wanted to talk to you about an important matter. We sit down in the living room. I pour him tea, but he doesn't even touch the cup. His gaze wanders around the room, stopping at the pictures on the mantelpiece Iona and Osbert as children. Alfred in the garden, our family picture from the last Christmas when he was alive. Mother, Osbert finally begins, looking me straight in the eye. Do you remember that Percival will soon be 100 days old? I nod. Delilah is planning some sort of grand celebration. She even sent me an invitation, printed on expensive gold-embossed paper. Delilah and I have been thinking a lot about Percival's future, about his education, about the opportunities we want to give him. I nod again, not sure what he's getting at. You see, Mom, we've decided to set up a trust fund for Percival, to secure his future, so that he could have all the opportunities that I didn't have. I look at my son with bewilderment. He had every opportunity. Alfred and I worked hard to pay for his and Jonah's education. Alfred took extra shifts at the factory, and I gave private lessons in the evenings. Osbert, you had a good education. You graduated from college with honors. Yes, of course! He waves his hand impatiently. But things are different now. There's more competition. Percival will need a better education, better opportunities. I still don't understand where he's going with this. And that's why, Mom, I wanted to talk to you about your savings. That's it. I feel like I've been splashed with cold water. My savings. The money I got when Alfred and I sold our house after he died. I moved into a little house on the outskirts of town and put the rest of the money in an account. It's my safety net, my future. What about my savings, Osbert? Mom, he leans forward, his voice soft, persuasive. You're not young anymore. You don't need all this money. And Percival is your grandson, your flesh and blood. I can feel the anger rising inside me, but I hold back. What exactly are you suggesting, Osbert? Give up your savings for my baby. He says it like it's the most natural thing in the world. We'll set up a trust fund in Percival's name. It will be your contribution to his future. I look at my son and I don't recognize him. When did he become like this? When did he decide he could just come and demand my money? Money that Alfred and I have saved up all our lives. Osbert, this is a serious request. I need to think about it. What is there to think about, Mother? His voice becomes harsh, impatient. You don't spend that money anyway. It's just sitting in an account, and Percival needs it for the future. I need to think about it, I say firmly. It's a big decision. Osbert sighs, but then his face is soft again, persuasive. Of course, Mother, think about it, but not for too long. We want to announce the foundation at a celebration in honor of Percival's 100 days. He gets up, kisses me on the cheek, and leaves without even touching the tea and cookies. I remain sitting in the living room, staring at the closed door. Something in Osbert's behavior alarms me. His insistence, his impatience. Usually he's more reserved, more reasonable. There's something wrong here. In the evening, Iona calls. Mother, she says without greeting. Osbert said he spoke to you about the money for Percival. So they're in cahoots. Jonah and Osbert have been discussing my money behind my back. Yes, he was here today. What did you decide? I said I needed to think about it. Lona sighs. Mom, what's there to think about? It's for your grandson. Don't you want him to have a good future? What about Wilfred and Hattie? I ask. They're my grandchildren too. There is a pause. That's different, Mom, Jonah finally says. Percival has his whole life ahead of him, and that money's still sitting around. You're not going to spend it. I can feel the anger building up inside me. My kids think they can control my money, my life. They don't even ask if I have any plans of my own for that money. They've just decided that at my age there can be no plans. I'll think about it, Jonah, I say, and hang up without waiting for her answer. That night, I can't sleep. I lie in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about my life, about how I've always put my kids first, how I gave up what I wanted for them, and now that they're grown, they only see me as a free babysitter and a source of money. Something inside of me is breaking. I can't live like this anymore. I can't let them use me. I can't give up the last thing I have left, my savings, my independence, my future. I get out of bed, walk to my desk and pull out a notebook. I start writing a plan that will change my life and possibly my children's lives. A plan that will make them realize that I am not just an old woman to be bossed around. I am Winifred Widowson, and I deserve respect. By morning, the plan is ready. I set my pen aside and look out the window where the sky is beginning to lighten. For the first time in a long time, I feel alive, full of determination. The feeling is intoxicating and terrifying at the same time, but I know I'm doing the right thing. I will no longer sacrifice myself for children who take it for granted. It's time to think about myself. It's time to start living for myself. And I know where to start. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. It was still dark outside, but I was wide awake. My mind was reeling with the events of last night and my conversation with Osbert. His words were still ringing in my ears. Give me your savings for my baby. Not a request, but a demand. It was as if I, his mother, was just a vault of money that he could take away at will. I got out of bed, wincing at the pain in my knees, and walked to the window. The streetlight illuminated the small garden I'd grown so lovingly over the years. Every bush, every flower reminded me of some period of my life. Roses for the early years of my marriage to Alfred, lavender for the birth of Jonah, jasmine for the arrival of Osbert. My life has always revolved around family. First parents, then husband and children, now grandchildren. Where was myself in all of this? Winifred Widowson, not a mother, not a grandmother, not a widow, just a woman with her own dreams and desires? I went to the dresser and pulled out the old jewelry box where I kept my memorabilia. Among the yellowed photos and children's crafts lay a small notebook in a worn leather cover. My travel journal, which I had started keeping before I was married. The first and only pages were devoted to a trip to Spain I'd taken when I was 21. At that time, I was working as a governess for a diplomat's family, and I was lucky enough to spend the summer in a small seaside town near Barcelona. It was there that I met Delphina Tancred, a young French woman studying art. We became fast friends despite our different personalities. I was a quiet, reserved English woman, and she was a bright, emotional French woman. Perhaps that's why we were drawn to each other. After that summer, we corresponded for years. I told her about my marriage, the birth of my children, my teaching career. She shared stories about her travels, her work in galleries, her failed romances. Gradually, the letters became shorter and less frequent, and then were replaced by occasional Christmas cards. The last one came about 5 years ago, shortly after Alfred's death. Delphina wrote that she'd finally settled in the very Spanish town where we'd met, bought a small house overlooking the sea, and opened a small art studio. I ran my fingers over the faded ink. What if, what if I visited her? Not just visit, but live there for a while? Away from the children, away from their demands, away from the feeling that my life didn't belong to me. The thought seemed so bold, so out of character that I laughed out loud. A 67-year-old widow leaving everything and going to Spain. Sounds like the beginning of some kind of lady's novel. But the more I thought about it, the more real the idea seemed. I had savings, the very savings that Osbert had so insistently claimed. I had my health, despite the pain in my knees and the occasional spikes in my blood pressure. I had a passport, which I'd renewed 2 years ago, planning a trip to Edinburgh for a literary festival, a trip I'd never taken because Iona had asked me to babysit at the last minute. I was suddenly overcome with a strange feeling, a mixture of excitement and fear. I, Winifred Widowson, had always been the one who followed the rules, who put the needs of others before my own. But now, looking at the old journal, I realized I was ready to change that. I spent the rest of the morning on the computer Osbert had given me last Christmas. So you can see pictures of the grandkids on social media, as he explained. Instead, I searched for information about visas, the cost of living in Spain, and rentals. By noon, I had a rough plan. First was to contact Delphina. I found her last postcard and typed an email, trying to be brief but honest. I told her about my situation, about how I felt used by my own children, about their demand to give up their savings. Finally, she asked if I could stay with her for a while until I found my own place. When I sent the letter, I felt strangely relieved, as if I had taken the first step toward freedom. Now I had to wait for a reply and prepare for a possible departure. That same afternoon, Iona called me. Her voice sounded tense. "Mom, could you pick up Wilfred from school tomorrow? His classes end at 2 o'clock and I work until 5. What about Hattie?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Jocelyn's mom is picking her up. They're going to some children's party. So you can pick up Wilfred?" I was going to say no. I wanted to say that I had my own plans, that I didn't have to always accommodate her schedule. But instead I heard my own voice say, "Sure, honey, I'll pick him up. Thanks, Mom." I could hear the relief in her voice. "By the way, have you thought about what Osbert was saying? The money for Percival? That's it. The real reason for the call." "I'm still thinking, Lona." "But Mother, there's nothing to think about. It's for your grandson. What about your children?" I couldn't stand it. They are my grandchildren too. Why should the money go only to Percival? There was a pause. "It's different, Mother," Iona said at last. "Percival is still very young. He has his whole life ahead of him. And then Osbert and Delilah have a specific plan to set up a trust fund for his education. Don't you have plans for Wilfred and Hattie's education?" I asked. "Mom, you know my situation," she said, a touch of hurt in her voice. "Since my divorce from Adrian, I've had to make every penny count. He's barely paying child support. I can't plan for something as expensive as private school or college." I sighed. Iona always used her divorce as an excuse. Yes, Adrian hadn't turned out to be the most reliable man, but it had been 4 years. Other divorced women manage somehow, find ways to provide for their children. "I'll think about it, Jonah," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "I haven't decided anything yet." "Okay." She was obviously disappointed. "So you're picking Wilfred up tomorrow?" "Yeah, 2 o'clock. "Thanks, Mom. You're the best." After talking to Jonah, I felt my resolve to leave only strengthened. I had to act fast before the kids suspected something was wrong. The next morning, I went to the bank. My goal was simple: to withdraw all the money from my account. Not a traceable wire transfer, but cash. It was a substantial sum, almost £150,000 left over from the sale of my and Alfred's house after paying for the new home and all the taxes. At the bank, I was met by a young girl with a friendly smile. "How can I help you?" "I would like to withdraw money from my account," I said, trying to sound confident. "How much would you like to withdraw?" "All of it." Her smile faded a little. "The whole account?" "That's quite a lot of money, Miss Widowson. May I ask what you need the money for?" I was prepared for that question. "I plan to invest it. My financial advisor recommended better terms at another bank." It was a lie, but it sounded plausible enough. The girl nodded, although there was doubt in her eyes. I see. It will take us some time to withdraw such a large sum of money. Can you wait about 30 minutes? I nodded and sat down in a chair in the waiting area. My heart was pounding like crazy. I'd never lied so blatantly before, never done anything like this. But in a strange way, it gave me strength. For the first time in years, I felt alive, active, not just adrift. 40 minutes later, I was ushered into a separate office where the manager, a middle-aged man with an attentive gaze, was waiting. Miss Widowson, he began, I'd like to make sure you're fully aware of what you're doing. There are risks involved in withdrawing the entire amount in cash. I am aware of those risks, I replied firmly. May I ask why you don't want to make a bank transfer? It would be much safer. I prefer cash, I said, trying to make my voice sound confident. And I'd like to get the money today if possible. The manager gave me a long look, but I didn't take my eyes off him. Finally, he nodded. All right, Miss Widowson, we'll get the money ready. But I must warn you, it's a large sum. You'll need a safe place to keep it. I've taken care of that, I lied again. An hour later, I left the bank with a bag containing all my savings. It felt strange to carry the result of a lifetime of work and savings. I went straight to the post office where I rented a safe deposit box. Not the most secure place, but much safer than keeping that much money at home. Leaving most of the money in the safe deposit box, I hurried to Wilfred's school. On the way, I checked my email on my phone. I hadn't heard back from Delphina yet. What if she didn't answer? Or she said no? Then she'd have to look for other options. But the decision to leave was ripe. Wilfred was happy to see me at the school gate. He ran up and hugged my legs. He'd been more affectionate lately, maybe sensing something was going on. Grandma, can we go to the park? He asked as we walked to the bus stop. Sure, honey, I agreed, deciding that all other things could wait. In the park, Wilfred fed the ducks and ran around the pond, and I sat on a bench and watched him. So carefree, so full of life. I thought of Percival, still tiny, with his trust fund that his parents wanted so much for him, and of Hattie, who in her 6 years was already showing amazing drawing ability, but Jonah was too busy to notice. My grandchildren, am I really going to abandon them? The thought made me wince. But then I reminded myself, I'm not abandoning them forever. Just taking a pause, time for myself, time for my children to realize I'm not just a convenient resource, but a person with my own wants and needs. In the evening, after putting Wilfred to bed, Jonah stayed late at work again. I finally got a response from Delphina. She wrote in a mixture of English, French, and Spanish, as emotional and vivid as ever. Ma chérie, what a surprise to get a letter from you. Of course, come and visit. My house is your home. I have a guest bedroom overlooking the sea. You'll wake up to the sound of the waves. Oh, Winnie, it's been years. But I've always remembered you, your kindness, your restraint. Too much restraint if you ask me. Judging by your letter, these kids don't appreciate you at all. It's time to show them that their mother is not just an ATM and babysitter. Come soon. We'll drink wine on the terrace and watch the sunset like old times. I read the letter several times, feeling my eyes fill with tears. Delphina hasn't changed, still the same emotional, straightforward, supportive person, and she's waiting for me. I have a place to go. The next 2 weeks passed in feverish preparations. I bought a plane ticket to Barcelona, and from there I planned to take a bus to the seaside town where Delphina lived. I ordered a new suitcase. The old one would fall apart on the way. I packed the most necessary things, documents, photos. I did my best to act normal. Picked Wilfred up from school on Tuesdays and Thursdays, cooked lunch for Jonah when she stopped by with the kids on Sunday, talked on the phone with Osbert, who kept insisting on handing over the money. Mother, are you still thinking? He asked impatiently. The holiday is already 3 weeks away. We need to get the papers ready. I've almost made up my mind, I replied. And it was the truth. The decision had been made, just not the one he expected. A week before the planned departure, the thing I feared most happened. Osbert arrived unannounced with a folder of documents. Mom, I've brought the papers for the trust fund, he announced from the doorstep. All you have to do is sign them, and we'll transfer the money to the trust fund right away. Osbert, I began, feeling my heart pounding. I haven't decided yet. What's there to decide, Mother? He interrupted me. It's for your grandson. You're not going to spend that money. At your age. At my age? I asked him again, and something in my voice silenced him. What about my age, Osbert? Well, you're not young anymore, Mother. You don't need that kind of money. Percival will have a future. I looked at my son, a tall, confident man, so like Alfred in appearance, but so different in character. Alfred had never been so possessive. He respected other people's boundaries, other people's decisions. I'll think about it some more, I said firmly. Now, if you don't mind, I have a doctor's appointment scheduled. It was a lie, but Osbert didn't insist. He left the file on the desk and left, muttering something about senile stubbornness. After he left, I sat down at the table and stared at the folder for a long time. Inside was a plan to deprive me of my savings, all that was left of my life with Alfred, all under the pretense of caring for Percival's future. That evening, Lona called. Mother, Osbert says you still have doubts, she began without preamble. Why are you so stubborn? It's for Percival. What about Wilfred and Hetty? I asked again. They're my grandchildren, too. Mom, we've talked about this. This is different. Osbert and Delilah have a specific plan. Don't you have plans for your children's education? Mom, you know my situation after I divorced Adrian. It's always the same excuses. Jonah, I interrupted her. I haven't made a decision yet. Give me time. But Mom, give me time, Lona, I repeated firmly. After talking to my daughter, I checked my plan again. The plane ticket was bought for the following Tuesday. Delphina confirmed that the room was ready for me. I had already packed most of the things I planned to take with me and stashed my suitcase in the closet. The hardest part was writing my farewell letter. I sat over the blank sheet of paper for a long time, not knowing how to explain what I'd done. I didn't want to accuse. I didn't want to hurt. But it didn't make sense to hide the truth either. The letter was short. Dear Jonah and Osbert, by the time you read this, I will be far away. I have decided to take a break from our married life and live for myself. Don't worry about me. I'm safe and in good company. As for the money you were so worried about, it's with me. I have decided to spend it on myself, on my new life. It may be selfish, but after all the years I've spent taking care of others, I've earned the right to be selfish. Don't try to find me. When I'm ready, I'll contact you myself. Love, your mother. After rereading the letter, I folded it neatly and tucked it away in my desk drawer. A few more days and a new chapter of my life would begin. The life of Winifred Widowson. Not a mother, not a grandmother, not a widow, just a woman who had finally decided to live for herself. Tuesday morning was surprisingly sunny for Stockton. The rays shone through the thin curtains of my bedroom as if to encourage me. Today is the day, Winifred. Don't back down. I woke up early, long before the alarm clock rang. Sleep left instantly, giving way to a mixture of excitement and fear. Today, I will do the most audacious thing I've ever done in my life. Today, I would disappear. My flight was scheduled for 14:30, but I planned to leave the house at 9 in the morning. I had to get the money out of the safe deposit box and then take a cab to the airport. Everything was ready. Suitcase packed, documents checked several times, tickets printed. I got up, took a shower, drank some tea. My movements were mechanical, as if it wasn't me controlling my body, but some program. It was a strange sensation to realize that in a few hours, I would be leaving this house, this country, my familiar life. At 8 o'clock, I took out the letter I had written to the children and put it on the dining room table, in the most prominent place. Once more, I reread it. Dear Jonah and Osbert, by the time you read this, I will be far away. I've decided to take a break from our married life and live for myself. Don't worry about me. I'm safe and in good company. As for the money you were so worried about, it's with me. I've decided to spend it on myself, on my new life. It may be selfish, but after all the years I've spent taking care of others, I've earned the right to be selfish. Don't try to find me. When I'm ready, I'll contact you myself. Love, your mother. Each word resonated with pain, but also with determination. I realized I would cause my children anxiety, maybe even pain. But were they thinking about my feelings when they planned to take the last thing I had left of my past life? At 8:30, the phone rang. Jonah. Mom, can you pick up Hattie from daycare today? I have an interview for a new job, and Wilfred is being picked up by a neighbor with her son. I closed my eyes. This was it. The final test of my resolve. I'm sorry, Jonah. I can't make it tonight, I said, surprised at the firmness in my voice. What do you mean you can't? There was a hint of irritation in her voice. Do you have plans? Yes, I answered simply. I have plans. What plans? Now she wasn't even trying to hide her irritation. Mom, it's an important job interview. I can finally get a proper job. Can't you help me? For a moment, I almost gave up. Years of pleasing, of putting my children's needs before my own, were taking their toll. But then I remembered Osbert's demand for the money, his words about my age, Jonah's neglect of my time. I'm sorry, Jonah, but no, you'll have to find another option. Mom, she exclaimed, what's happening to you? You've never acted like this before. I'm just finally getting on with my life, I said, and hung up the phone, saying goodbye. My hands were shaking, but my resolve only grew stronger. I turned the phone off, knowing that Jonah would call back, maybe even ask Osbert to call me. Let them think the phone was dead. At 9 o'clock, right on schedule, I left the house with my suitcase. A neighbor, Mrs. Flanders, was watering the flowers in her garden and looked at me in surprise. Are you going away, Winifred? She asked. Yes, a little trip, I answered with a smile. Time to stretch the old bones. You're right. She nodded approvingly. It's about time. All the children and grandchildren. You should think about yourself, too. If only she knew how right she was. The cab I'd ordered in advance was waiting. The driver, a young guy with an earpiece in his ear, helped me with my suitcase. To the post office on High Street, please, I said, getting into the back seat. All the way to the post office, I stared out the window at the streets of Stockton floating by. The city where most of my life had been spent. The city I was now leaving, possibly forever. At the post office, I took money from the safe deposit box. Large bills, neatly stacked in a special pouch under my clothes, which I bought from an online store for travelers. Not the most original solution, but better than carrying everything in my bag. Now to the airport, please, I said to the driver as I got back into the cab. The airport was noisy and crowded. I handed in my suitcase, went through passport control, and found myself in the waiting area. A strange sense of unreality swept over me. I, Winifred Widowson, a 67-year-old widow and grandmother of 3 grandchildren, sitting in the airport waiting for a flight to Barcelona, with money under my clothes and no return ticket. At 12 o'clock, I turned on my phone to check my email. As expected, there were several missed calls from Jonah and even a couple from Osbert. I didn't bother listening to the voicemails. They were sure to be full of recriminations and demands. Instead, I sent Delphina a short message confirming my arrival. She replied almost instantly. Looking forward to it. Bought a bottle of your favorite sherry. Remember when we drank it at that little bar by the beach? Bon voyage, ma chérie. I smiled. Delphina remembered that I loved sherry, even though so many years had passed. She was always attentive to detail. The flight was announced on time. I boarded the plane, found my window seat. A young couple sat next to me, newlyweds, judging by their matching bracelets and amorous looks. Do you often fly to Barcelona? The girl asked, noticing that I didn't look as excited as they did. For the first time in many years, I answered. But I spent a wonderful summer there a long time ago. Oh, it's so romantic, she exclaimed. Bringing back memories. You could say that, I smiled. But more to create new ones. They exchanged glances, clearly thinking I was a nice, eccentric old lady. Let them think what they want. My life is no longer defined by other people's expectations. The flight was uneventful. I even took a nap, lulled by the monotonous hum of the engines. When the plane began to descend and the blue Mediterranean Sea appeared in the porthole, I felt a strange sense of homecoming. Although I had only spent one summer in Spain almost 50 years ago, something about the country had always resonated with my soul. At the Barcelona airport, I turned my phone back on. More missed calls. Now both kids were calling alternately, almost nonstop. They must have found my letter by now. I imagined their panic, their bewilderment, perhaps even anger. Osbert must be the angriest of them all. His plan to get my money had fallen through. I texted Delphina that I had landed and would be on the bus soon. She replied that she would meet me at the bus station. The journey from the airport to the bus station was a blur. Everything around me seemed both foreign and strangely familiar. Spanish signs, loud speech, bright colors. I bought a bus ticket to Cadaqués, the small seaside town where Delphina lived. The bus was almost empty, not the season for tourists. I sat at the window watching the scenery change behind the glass. Barcelona, with its bustling streets and majestic architecture, was gradually giving way to coastal towns drenched in greenery and sunlight. After 3 hours, the bus entered Cadaqués. The small town, nestled on the shore of the bay, with white houses climbing the hillsides and narrow winding streets, looked just like in my memories. It was as if time had stopped here. At the bus station, which was just a platform with a canopy, I saw Delphina. She stood with her hand over her eyes, shielding her eyes from the sun, looking for me among the exiting passengers. I recognized her at once. Despite the years, she hadn't changed much. The same slender figure, short haircut, now, however, silver instead of dark, and a brightly colored scarf around her neck. "Winnie!" she exclaimed when she saw me and rushed toward me with open arms. We hugged, and I smelled the familiar scent of her perfume, something floral with a hint of spice. "You haven't changed at all," she said, pulling away and looking at me. "Still the same elegant Englishwoman." "And you're still a liar," I laughed. "I've grown old and we both know it." "Nonsense," she said. "We've matured like fine wine. Come on, my car is in the parking lot." Delphina drove like she did everything else in her life. Fast and enthusiastic. The little red Fiat looped through the narrow streets of Cadaqués, climbing higher and higher into the hills above the city. "My house is at the top," she explained. "The view is divine, worth every euro I paid for it." Delphina's house turned out to be a small white villa with blue shutters and a terrace overhanging the sea. Around it was a Mediterranean garden, olive trees, lavender, rosemary. "Welcome to my little paradise," Delphina said, helping me with my suitcase. "I hope you like it here." Inside, the house was as bright and eclectic as its hostess. Paintings on the walls, obviously Delphina's own work, colorful cushions on the couches, books, figurines, souvenirs from different countries. "Your room is here." Delphina opened the door to a small but bright bedroom with a balcony. Just as I promised, a view of the sea. I walked to the balcony and froze with admiration. Below was the sea, bright blue sparkling in the sun. In the distance, I could see the outlines of fishing boats. "It's beautiful," I breathed out. "And this is your home now," Delphina smiled. "For as long as you like." We settled on the terrace with glasses of sherry, which Delphina had, as promised, bought especially for my arrival. The sun was setting, coloring the sky and the sea in shades of pink and gold. "So," Delphina raised her glass, "to your freedom, ma chérie." "To freedom," I echoed, clinking my glass with hers. "Now tell me everything," she demanded. "You were so reserved in your letter, so typically English. I want to know every detail." So I did. About the children who saw me only as a free nursemaid and a source of money. About Osbert's demand that I give up my savings for Percival's trust fund. My decision to leave and start a new life. "Bravo!" Delphina exclaimed when I was finished. "You finally acted like a real woman instead of a dutiful mother and grandmother. I always said you had fire in you, Winnie. It was just hidden too deep." We talked late into the night, reminiscing about the past, discussing the present, making plans for the future. When I finally went to bed, the fatigue and the sherry had done their work and I fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. In the morning, I was awakened by the sound of the sea and the cries of seagulls. For a moment, I was confused, not realizing where I was. Then it all came back. My escape, Delphina, Cadaqués. I lay in bed watching the sunlight play on the ceiling and felt strangely peaceful. For the first time in a long time, I woke up without a thought of what I needed to do for others. Today I could do whatever I wanted. Delphina was already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast-fresh croissants from the local bakery, fruit, strong coffee. "Bonjour, Sleeping Beauty," she exclaimed when she saw me. "How did you sleep in your new place?" "Surprisingly well," I admitted. After breakfast, Delphina offered to show me around the city. We wandered through the narrow streets of Caracas, looked in small stores, sat in cafes in the main square, watching the local life. Everything is slower here, Delphina explained. People are not in a hurry, they are enjoying life. I suddenly realized that for the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about time, about having to hurry or meet someone or take care of someone. I was just here and now, and that feeling seemed like an almost forgotten luxury. By late afternoon, we got home, and I finally decided to turn on my phone. 37 missed calls, 23 from Osbert, 14 from Jonah, and a multitude of messages ranging from panic to angry. "Mom, where are you? Call me now," from Jonah. "It's not funny, Mom. We're all worried. Wilfred is crying," again from Jonah. "Mom, what the hell is going on? Where did you disappear to? And what do you mean the money is with you? Call me back immediately," from Osbert. The last message was sent an hour ago. "Mom, we've gone to the police. If you're reading this, please let me know you're okay. We're going crazy with worry." I showed the messages to Delphina. "They're worried," I said with a note of guilt in my voice. "They're worried about money," Delphina corrected. "Especially your son, by the looks of it." "Perhaps I should answer that? Just say I'm fine." "That's your decision, ma chérie. But remember why you're here. If you make contact right away, the whole effect will be lost." I knew she was right. The purpose of my disappearance was not only to start a new life, but also to make the children realize that I wasn't just a handy resource that was always at hand. "You're right," I said, turning off my phone. "Let them worry a little longer." Over the next few days, I slowly adjusted to my new life. Delphina showed me her art studio, a bright room in the attic overlooking the sea. There she held classes for local children and tourists. "You could join her," she suggested. "Help with the lessons. After all, you're an ex-teacher." "But I taught English, not art," I objected. "Pfft," Delphina snorted. "What's the difference? The main thing is to be able to engage, to interest. And they don't teach you that. You either have it or you don't. You have it." And so I started helping Delphina in the studio. At first, I was just assisting, preparing materials, putting things in order. Then I started to conduct part of the classes, mostly with English-speaking tourists, of whom there were quite a few even in the off-season. We spent evenings on the terrace, watching sunsets, talking about everything, sometimes silently listening to the sound of the sea. At these moments, I felt a peace and freedom that I had not experienced for many years. And what about my children? They kept calling, but less and less often. The tone of the messages changed from panic to anger, then to bewilderment, and finally to resignation. "The police say you flew to Spain voluntarily," Osbert wrote. "I don't understand what's going on, Mom. Why are you doing this?" "Found your picture at the airport," Iona reported. "Did you actually fly away without saying a word? How could you?" I read these messages with mixed feelings of guilt and satisfaction. They finally noticed that I existed separate from their needs, that I had my own life, my own desires. On my 10th day in Spain, Delphina returned from town with the local newspaper and a strange look on her face. "What happened?" I asked. "Your son," she said, holding out the paper to me. "He's here." I stared at her in bewilderment, then shifted my gaze to the paper. On one of the inside pages was a small ad in English and Spanish. "Wanted Winifred Widowson, 67 years old, believed to be in the Costa Brava area. Any information, please phone." And Osbert's number. "He won't give up," I muttered. "He's looking for money," Delphina corrected. "Not you." I knew she was right. Osbert was persistent, not because he was worried about me, but because of the £150,000 I had taken with me. That evening, Delphina returned from the store with news. "There's an Englishman in town," she said. "Showing your picture, asking if anyone has seen you." "Osbert," I breathed out. My heart pounded. "He's here." "Don't worry." Delphina sat down next to me and took my hand. "No one will give you away. They don't like outsiders prying into other people's business. Besides, you're not a criminal. You're a grown woman who has the right to live wherever she wants." But I still felt uneasy. Catacase is a small town. Sooner or later, Osbert might come across someone who saw me with Delphina. Maybe I should talk to him. I suggested it. Explain everything. If you're ready for that, Delphina nodded. But remember why you're here. Don't let him manipulate you, make you feel guilty. I nodded, but my insides clenched at the thought of the confrontation ahead. I hadn't seen Osbert in only 10 days, but it felt like months had passed, that life was in a different reality. The next day, Delphina returned from town with new information. Your son is staying at the Hotel Mar Azul on the waterfront. He went around to all the restaurants and stores showing your picture. He says you're his mother, that you're sick and need help. Sick? I was outraged. It's just manipulation, Delphina finished for me. He's trying to sympathize. That evening, sitting on the terrace, I could see the lights of the city below and thought of Osbert, who might be wandering the same streets as Delphina and I had that afternoon. Looking for me. Looking for the money. The phone rang again. Osbert. I almost decided to answer it, but at the last moment I dropped the call. Immediately a message came through. Mom, I know you're in cateches. Please let's talk. I'm worried about you. Worried? Of course he is. If he was worried, he wouldn't have demanded that I give up all my savings for his son. If he worried, he'd notice how tired I am sitting with my grandchildren instead of taking it for granted. But a part of me, the part of me that has always been a mother first and foremost, responded to that phrase. Maybe he's really worried. Maybe my disappearance had made him reconsider how he felt about me. That night, I couldn't sleep for a long time, listening to the sound of the sea and thinking about my son, who was now somewhere very close to me, in the same small town. Looking for me, and money, of course. Above all, money. The morning light was shining through the blinds, coloring the room in soft golden tones. I woke to the sound of the phone, another call from Osbert. The third this morning, and it was only 8 o'clock. Yesterday, he'd called 28 times. The day before that, 32. My son's persistence knew no bounds. I didn't answer. I only turned my phone on once a day to check messages and then turned it off again. Delphina thought I should change my number altogether, but I wasn't ready to cut off all contact with my past life. He won't give up, Delphina said, coming into the room with a cup of coffee. I saw him outside the post office yesterday. Showed your picture to the mailman. And what did the mailman say? That he'd never seen you before, she grinned. Antonio is an old friend of mine. He wouldn't give you away to anyone, even if he delivered letters right to our door. That was the advantage of a small town. Everyone knew everyone, and a stranger asking too many questions would only cause distrust and silence. He's been here 2 weeks, I sighed. He'll have to go back to England someday. He has a job, a family. Yeah, but while he's here, we'd better be careful. Delphina sat down on the edge of the bed. No strolls along the waterfront, no visits to downtown cafes. Good thing my studio's on the outskirts. I nodded. For almost a month now, I had been living in this little Mediterranean town, and every day was a discovery. At first, Delphina and I just walked around, exploring the neighborhood, visiting the local markets and museums. Then I started helping her at the art studio, first with administrative stuff, and then with classes for English-speaking children. I loved working with the children again, not as a grandmother who had to take care of her grandchildren, but as a mentor to help them discover their creative potential. The children came to the studio with burning eyes, full of enthusiasm and curiosity. They didn't take my help for granted. They thanked me, asked questions, shared their thoughts. You're blossoming, Winnie, Delphina remarked one day, as she watched me help a little girl mix paint to create the perfect shade of aqua. When you first got here, you had that look in your eyes that was so tired. Now they shine. I could feel the change myself. It was as if a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders, a weight of constant responsibility, of being always available, always ready to put aside my plans for the needs of my children and grandchildren. Here in Cadaqués, I could just be myself. Winifred, not a mother, not a grandmother, not a widow, just a woman with her own interests and desires. I even began to draw ineptly, amateurishly, but with a pleasure I hadn't experienced since high school. Delphina patiently explained the basics of composition, color work, and different techniques. You have a sense of color, she said as she looked at my first watercolor sketches. You just have to learn to trust your intuition. Beyond painting, I discovered the joy of simple things. Long walks on the beach at dawn when no one was around, reading books in a hammock under an olive tree, cooking local dishes from recipes shared by Delphina's neighbors. The only thing that marred this idyll was Osbert's constant calls and thoughts of how Jonah and the grandchildren were doing, especially the grandchildren. The phone rang again. This time it was Iona. She called less often than Osbert, usually once or twice a day, and the messages from her were different, less demanding, more confused. Mom, I don't understand why you left so suddenly. The children miss you. Wilfred keeps asking when Grandma will be back. Please call. Unlike Osbert, Iona seemed to really miss me, not just my help with the kids, or maybe I just wanted to believe it. Iona's on the phone, I said to Delphina. Will you answer it? I shook my head. It wasn't time yet. After breakfast, we went to the studio. Today was a class for local children, a group of 6 boys and girls from 7 to 10 years old. I didn't speak Spanish well enough to teach, but I was able to help with materials, show techniques. The day flew by. In the evening on our way home, we passed by the main square and saw Osbert. He was sitting in a cafe looking at something on his phone, tired and frowning. I instinctively retreated into the shadows, though he was looking the other way and would hardly have noticed me. Your son looks exhausted, Delphina remarked. He's stubborn, I said. He's always been that way. Once he's got it in his head, he won't back down. I wonder what's driving him more, worrying about his mother or wanting the money back. I didn't answer. It was a question that tormented me. I wanted to believe that Osbert sought me out of love, out of concern. But his insistence, his angry messages told me otherwise. Mother, I don't understand how you could do such a thing. That money was needed for Percival's future. Your grandson. How could you be so selfish? Selfish. That word hurt the most. All my life, I've put my children's needs before my own, gave up career opportunities, travel, my own interests for them. And now that I've done something for myself for the first time, I'm selfish? At home, I turned on my phone to check my messages. 15 missed calls from Osbert, 2 from Jonah, and a message from her. Mom, I talked to a psychologist about our situation. She helped me realize something. It seems that Osbert and I have been taking you for granted for a long time. Forgive us. Please let me know you're okay. I reread the message several times. Iona went to a psychologist and admitted that they'd been treating me wrong? That was so unlike my practical, always sure-footed daughter. Did something happen? Delphina asked, noticing my pensive expression. I showed her the message. Progress, she nodded. It looks like your daughter is beginning to understand. And Osbert is still angry, I sighed. It's always harder for men to admit their mistakes, Delphina said philosophically, especially when it comes to their mothers, but he'll understand too. In time. I had plenty of time now. No schedules, no commitments, no need to adjust to other people's plans. The next morning, stepping out onto the balcony with a cup of tea, I saw an envelope in the mailbox by the gate. Strange, usually the mail came later. Delphina, are you expecting a letter? I asked, coming down to the kitchen. No, why? There's an envelope in the drawer. We walked to the gate together. The envelope was addressed to me. Winifred Widdowson was written in Jonah's familiar handwriting. How did she know the address? I wondered. Small town, Delphina shrugged. Someone could have told her, or she was following her brother. I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter and several pictures, Wilfred and Hattie at the park, at the beach, at the holiday table. Dear Mom, I don't know if you will get this letter. I hope you will. I've been thinking a long time about what to say to you, how to explain my feelings. Osbert thinks I should demand your return, talk about your responsibility. But I don't agree with him anymore. After you left, I had to rethink a lot of things. The psychologist helped me to see how Osbert and I treated you all those years ago. We took your help, your time, your love for granted. We thought you existed only for us. We never thought about your wishes, your dreams. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry for all the times I left the kids with you unannounced, for all the times I ignored your plans, thinking they were less important than mine, for never saying thank you often enough. The kids miss you, sending some pictures so you can see them growing up. Wilfred won the school math contest. Hattie learned to swim without a mittens. They often ask about you. I tell them that Grandma is traveling, discovering the world, that she deserves it. I'm not asking you to come back. Just let me know that you're okay, that you're happy. That's all that matters. Love, Jonah. I sank down on the bench by the gate, feeling tears come to my eyes. It was exactly the confession I'd been subconsciously waiting for all these years. The recognition that I wasn't just a mother and grandmother, but a human being with my own needs and desires. Is everything okay? Delphina asked, sitting down next to me. I silently held out the letter to her. She read it and nodded. It was a good letter, sincere. Your daughter has really realized her mistakes. Yes, I agreed, looking at the pictures of the grandchildren. They had grown so much this month. Or did it just seem that way to me? I have to answer her. Of course, Delphina squeezed my hand. But take your time. Think about what you want to say. I didn't go to the studio that day. I stayed home, rereading Jonah's letter, looking at the pictures, thinking about my decision to leave. I didn't regret it. Those weeks in Spain gave me a sense of freedom and self-worth that I hadn't experienced in decades. But thinking about my grandchildren, about how they would grow up without me, caused a pinching feeling in my chest. In the evening, sitting on the terrace with a glass of wine, I decided to check my phone. The calls from Osbert continued. He had called 23 times today. But there was also a new message from Jonah. I hope you got my letter. Osbert is still in Spain. He doesn't know I wrote to you. He's so fixated on money that he doesn't see the main thing. Forgive him, Mother. It is harder for him to understand. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready yet. But I already felt like I could do it soon. The next day, Delphina came back from town with news. Your son is going to leave, she said. I heard him saying in the cafe that he had to go back to England. Something to do with his work. He's giving up? I wondered. I don't think so. More like making a strategic retreat. Perhaps he's realized he can't get anywhere by direct pursuit. The news of Osbert's imminent departure brought mixed feelings. On the one hand, I could breathe more freely without fear of meeting him on the streets. On the other hand, I was strangely disappointed that he was leaving without speaking to me, without trying to understand my motives. Did you want to meet him before you left? Delphina asked, watching my reaction carefully. I don't know, I answered honestly. Part of me wants to explain myself, but the other part knows he's not ready to listen. He's still too angry. That evening, I decided to take a walk around the city, for the first time without Delphina. Osbert should have been at the airport by now, from what my friend had told me. Cadaqués was especially beautiful in the evening, with lights reflecting in the dark water of the bay, a light breeze coming off the sea, people strolling leisurely along the promenade or sitting in outdoor cafes. I was walking along, enjoying the atmosphere, when suddenly I noticed Osbert on the other side of the street. He was leaning against the railing of the promenade and looking out to sea. I froze, not knowing what to do. Approach? Hide? He looked pensive, almost sad. At that moment, a man approached him, a local, judging by his gestures. They talked about something, and Osbert showed him something on his phone, probably a picture of me. The man shook his head. Osbert sighed, shrugged, and moved on down the embankment. I followed him cautiously, keeping my distance. He stopped at a small cafe, sat down at a table, ordered something. He took out his cell phone, stared at the screen for a long time, then dialed a number. A moment later, my phone rang, which I held in my hand. I quickly dropped the call, but my heart was pounding like crazy. Osbert put the phone down on the table, running his hand over his face. There was so much fatigue in that gesture, so much frustration that it made me uncomfortable. He looked aged, haggard. I took a few steps toward him, but stopped. No, not yet. First, he has to realize what he's done. He has to understand why I left. I turned and walked quickly away before he could see me. All the way to Delphina's house, I had a strange feeling, a mixture of guilt for my son's suffering and a strong conviction that I had done the right thing. At home, I told Delphina about the meeting. You were right not to go, she nodded. Let her think about it. Judging by what your daughter writes, he's beginning to understand. You think so? I asked hesitantly. I'm sure. Otherwise, he wouldn't look so lost. The next day, Osbert did indeed leave. Delphina confirmed this by talking to the hotel where he was staying. But the calls didn't stop. Now he was calling from England just as insistent, almost desperate. And 3 days later came another letter, this time from Osbert. It was shorter than Jonah's, and written with apparent difficulty. The handwriting was uneven. Some words were crossed out. Mother, I have returned to England without finding you, but I know you are somewhere in Catechis. I saw you last night on the waterfront. You followed me, and then you left. I don't understand why you didn't approach me. Why you've been avoiding me. Why you don't answer your phone. What did I do that was so terrible? Jonah says we took you for granted, that we never thought about your feelings. Maybe she's right. But is that any reason to abandon a family? Is that a reason to take money that could secure your grandson's future? I'm mad at you, Mom. But I also miss you. And frankly, I'm beginning to understand how you felt when I came to demand the money. I didn't mean it to sound like a demand. It's just, Delilah and I are having problems. Serious problems. And I didn't know how to ask for help. Come back, Mom. Or at least give me a call. Let's have a talk. Osbert. I read the letter several times. Osbert had seen me on the waterfront, so I hadn't been as careful as I thought. But the important thing was that he began to understand. He began to realize his guilt, not completely, still with resentment and anger, but the ice had broken. What are you going to do? Delphina asked me when I showed her the letter. I think it's time to answer them, I said. But not to go back. It's not time yet. I agree, she nodded. Show them you're okay, that you're happy, but don't be in a hurry to get back on track. I sat down at the table and pulled out paper and a pen. It was time to let the kids know that I was okay, that I was alive and well, and that their attitude toward me would have to change if they wanted me back in their lives. It's been 3 months since I escaped from Stockton, 3 months of my new life in Spain, 3 months in which it was as if I had lived more than I had in the previous 5 years. Cadaqués was transformed in the fall. The tourists had left, leaving the town to its true inhabitants. The sea became darker, deeper, more brooding. In the mornings, fog sometimes crept ashore, enveloping the fishing boats in a ghostly haze. I liked this meditative atmosphere more than the bustle of summer. After Osbert's departure, I sent short letters to the children. To Jonah, I wrote more warmly, thanking him for his understanding, telling him a little about my life here, enclosing some of my watercolor sketches. To Osbert, I wrote more reservedly, but without coldness. I confirmed that everything was all right with me, that I held no grudges against him, but that I needed time for myself. They reacted differently to these letters. Iona sent new photos of her grandchildren and a long, heartfelt letter in which she told me how she had changed her view of our relationship. She wrote that now she drove the children to all the classes herself, not shifting it to neighbors and acquaintances. She began to value her own and other people's free time. From Osbert came a short email message. Thanks for writing. Glad you're okay? We were worried. Calls from him became less frequent, maybe once a week instead of 30 times a day. I still hadn't answered, but I was already thinking about it. I was just waiting for the right time. My life in Cadaqués took on a pleasant rhythm. In the mornings, I would walk along the shore, watching the fishermen returning from their nightly fishing. Then I had breakfast with Delphina on the terrace, weather permitting. 3 days a week, I worked in her art studio. To my surprise, I enjoyed teaching the children not only English but also the basics of drawing. On my free days, I wandered around the neighborhood with a sketchbook, trying to capture the beauty of the area. I wasn't very good at it, but Delphina said I had my own style, naive but sincere, as she put it. We often sat on the terrace in the evenings, watching the sunset, sipping wine and discussing everything from politics to art to philosophy to memories of our youth. You know, Winnie, Delphina said one day, you've changed in these months. When you came here, you were so stiff, insecure. Now look at you. I smiled. She was right. I felt younger, freer, more confident. I had even changed outwardly, tanned in the Mediterranean sun, grown my hair a little longer than usual, changed from my conservative English clothes to brighter, looser clothes. It's all your influence, I replied. You've always been so lively. No, dear, Delphina shook her head. It's all you. I just showed you the door. It was up to you to walk through it. At the end of October, I got a letter from the lawyer I'd hired at the beginning of my Spanish adventure. I instructed him to find a charity for the elderly and to work out a scheme whereby I could transfer some of my savings to it in exchange for a small annuity for life. The lawyer wrote that he had found an ideal option, the Silver Age Foundation, which specializes in helping elderly people suffering from emotional abuse from relatives. They offered a scheme in which I gave them £100,000 and in return received a monthly allowance of £800 for the rest of my life. The rest of the money, about 50,000, would remain at my disposal. It was exactly what I was looking for. Enough money for a modest life in Spain. Life was cheaper here than in England. And at the same time, my money was going to a good cause, helping older people like me escape toxic family relationships. I signed all the paperwork and sent it back to London. When the confirmation came that the contract had come into effect, I felt strangely relieved, as if the last thread tying me to my past life had been severed. That same evening, sitting on the terrace and admiring a particularly beautiful sunset, I heard a familiar tune. My phone was ringing. Osbert's name popped up on the screen. Usually, I just watched the call go to missed. But today, something was different. I was ready to talk, ready to explain, ready to maybe start building a new relationship, not as mother and son, but as two adults who respect each other. I picked up the phone and pressed the green button. Mom? Osbert's voice was so surprised that I smiled. He obviously didn't expect me to answer. Mom, is that you? Hello, Osbert, I said calmly. Yes, it's me. Oh my God, you've answered at last, he exclaimed. I had given up hope. How are you? Where are you? When are you coming home? So many questions at once. That's how I remembered him, always impatient, always in a hurry. I'm fine, I answered. I live in Spain, in a small town by the sea. I don't plan to go back. You don't plan to... He hesitated. But why? Mom, we all miss you. Percival's growing up so fast, you miss everything. And Jonah says Wilfred and Hattie ask about you all the time. I miss my grandchildren too, I admitted. But I need this time to myself, Osbert. Time to realize who I am beyond being a mother and grandmother. But you... He hesitated again, apparently struggling for words. You've always been a mom, the best mom. Why would you want to be anything else? That's it. That's the attitude that made me leave. To him, I was only a mom. A function, a role, not a person with her own wants and needs. Because I'm not only a mother, Osbert, I said as gently as I could. I am Winifred Widowson, a woman who enjoys painting watercolors, reading historical novels, walking along the seashore at dawn, a woman who has dreams and plans, a woman who wants to live her own life. There was a pause. I could hear his breathing, heavy as if he were holding back emotion. Yeah, I never thought of it that way, he said finally. To me, you were always just... Mom. I know, I answered without reproach. And that's why I had to leave. To make you all realize that I don't just exist for you. There was another pause. Then he asked in a different tone, businesslike, tense. What about the money, Mom? The money you took with you? Oh, that's it. It was the money he cared most about. I've managed it, Osbert, I said calmly. Disposing of it? His voice got higher. What do you mean, managed? You spent it? All of it? No, I didn't spend it. I put it into a charity that helps elderly people who suffer from emotionally abusive relatives. What? He seemed stunned. What emotional abuse? Mom, what are you talking about? What's been going on in our family for years, I answered, trying to speak softly but firmly. You and Jonah took me for granted. They used my time, my energy, my love, and never thought about what I wanted for myself. And when I refused to give you the last thing I had left, my savings, you called me selfish. I didn't, he began, but he stopped. Then he said more quietly, maybe you're right. Iona said something like that we took you for granted. That admission, incomplete though it was, surprised me. Perhaps Osbert had begun to realize something during these months. What now? He asked after a pause. What about the money? You say you put it into a fund? Yes, I confirmed. Most of it. In exchange, the fund will pay me a small monthly allowance, enough for a modest life here in Spain. So you really don't plan to go back? There was so much confusion in his voice that I felt sorry for him. Not yet, Osbert. I'm fine here. I found work, friends, hobbies. For the first time in years, I feel free. Free. But what about us? What about the grandchildren? I'm not disappearing from your life forever, I said softly. I just won't live for you anymore. I won't sacrifice my interests, my time, my money. If you want me in your life, it will be on my terms, as someone who deserves respect and has the right to make my own decisions. There was a long pause. I could hear Osbert breathing heavily, as if trying to cope with his emotions. Did you really give all the money to that fund? He finally asked. Most of it, I repeated. It was my decision, Osbert. My right to use what I'd earned. But it was Daddy's money, too, he exclaimed with sudden fervor. It was for the family. No, Osbert, I said firmly. It was my and Alfred's money, our savings, which we had saved up all our lives. And Alfred never said it was for the family. He wanted me to be provided for when he died, so I could have a decent life. And you call that a decent life? There was bitterness in his voice. Running away from your family? Hiding in some Spanish village? Yes, Osbert, I answered calmly. That is a decent life. A life in which I decide what to do with my time, my money, my love. A life in which I am respected as a person, not used as a free babysitter and ATM. My words seemed to finally hit the mark. There was a long pause, after which Osbert spoke in a different tone, quiet, almost guilty. Mother, I didn't want you to feel this way. I didn't want you to think we were using you. I know you didn't, I said softly. But that's just the way it is. Both you and Jonah have a lot of rethinking to do. Realize that parents aren't a free resource forever, that we have our own lives, our own dreams, our own desires. Iona seems to have figured it out, he said. She talks about it a lot, about how we took you for granted, that we never thought about your feelings. And you, Osbert, do you understand? There was a pause again. Then he sighed. I think I'm beginning to understand, especially after what you said about the charity. That, it was like a slap in the face, an eye-opener. Did you really think that we were, emotionally abused you? I hesitated. Maybe the wording was too harsh, but in essence, yes, that's what had been going on for years. Maybe not consciously, I said finally, but the result was exactly that. I felt used, unwanted, invisible, as if my only value was in what I could do for you. I'm sorry, Mom, he said, and there was a sincerity in his voice that I hadn't heard in years. I'm really sorry. I didn't realize. You do now, I finished softly. And that's the main thing. We talked some more about Percival, about Delilah, about his work. He even mentioned the financial problems, not in passing, not in detail, but acknowledging their existence was an important step. Before saying goodbye, he asked, Mom, are you ever coming back? I don't know, Osbert, I answered honestly. Maybe someday, but not for good. Maybe I'll come and visit my grandchildren. I'd like that, he said quietly. I'd like to come visit you, see how you live, to meet your friends. The suggestion surprised me. Osbert had always been so self-sufficient, so focused on his own life, that the thought of his interest in my new reality seemed strange. Of course, I replied. You can come over, when you're ready. Thank you, Mom, he said. Forgive me, for everything. I sat on the terrace for a long time afterward, looking up at the stars, which seemed especially bright here, away from the city lights. Delphina joined me, bringing a bottle of sherry and 2 glasses. From the look on your face, the conversation went well, she said, pouring the golden liquid. Better than I expected, I admitted. I think he's really starting to understand. What's that? That I'm not just his mother, that I have a right to my own life. Bravo! Delphina raised her glass. To new beginnings and old endings. We clinked glasses and took a sip each. The sherry was sweet, with a slight aftertaste, just like today's conversation. You know, I said, looking at the dark sea below, when I left England, I thought I was running away from something, from the demands of the children, from feeling used, from the emptiness of my life. But now I realize I was actually running to something, the real me, the life I always wanted, but was afraid to admit it even to myself. Better late than never, Delphina said philosophically. Some people live their whole lives without knowing who they really are. Do you think, I asked, turning to her, that I could ever come back? Not permanently, of course. Just visit them, be a part of their lives, but on my own terms? Of course you can, she answered confidently, but only when they truly understand and accept your independence, when they stop seeing you only as a convenient resource, when they learn to respect your boundaries. Osbert offered to come here, I said with a smile, to meet you, to see my new life. Oh la 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 la, Delphina exclaimed with a theatrical wave of her hand. That's progress already. Maybe he's not as hopeless as we thought. We laughed, and suddenly I felt a lightness, a release that I had never felt in my life. It was as if the last weight had been lifted from my shoulders.